Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are always engaged in chanting the holy name of Krishna and dancing. They are just like the ocean of love of Godhead, and they are popular both with the gentle and with the ruffians, because they are not envious of anyone. Whatever they do, they are all pleasing to everyone, and they are fully blessed by Lord Caitanya. Thus, they are engaged in missionary activities meant to deliver all the conditioned souls in the material universe. Someone else, and we can go around.
One of our respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizing and studying all the revealed scriptures, with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honoured all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of, because they are absorbed in the mood of devotees and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami. You are very much enriched in understanding of Lord Caitanya. You are thus expert in narrating his transcendental qualities. They can purify all conditioned souls from the reactions of their sinful activities by pouring upon them transcendental songs about Govinda. As such, they are very expert in increasing the limits of the ocean of transcendental bliss. They are the saviours of the living entities from the devouring mouth of liberation.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who kicked off all association of aristocracy as insignificant. In order to deliver the poor conditioned souls, they accepted loincloths, treated themselves as mendicants, but they are always merged in the ecstatic ocean of the gopis' love for Krishna, and bathe always repeatedly in the waves of that ocean.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are always engaged in worshipping Radha Krishna in the transcendental land of Vrindavan, where there are beautiful trees full of fruits and flowers, which have under their roots all valuable jewels. The Goswamis are perfectly competent to bestow upon the living entities the greatest boon of the goal of life.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, and the Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Shri Raghunath Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Goswami would engage in chanting the holy name of the Lord without any strict initiative. This way they utilise their regular lives, executing these devotional activities they conquered, overeating and sleeping. They were always meek and humble, enchanted by the room and transcendental qualities of the Lord.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatana Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who was sometimes on the bank of the Radhakund lake or the shores of the Yamuna, and sometimes at Vamsivat. There they appeared just like madmen in the full ecstasy of love for Krishna, exhibiting different transcendental symptoms in their bodies, and they were merged in the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness.
Lucky last. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who were chanting very loudly everywhere in Vrindavan, shouting, Queen of Vrindavan, Radharani, O Lalita, O son of Nanda Maharaj, where are you all now? Are you just on the hill of Govardhan, or are you under the trees on the bank of the Jamuna? Where are you? These were their moods in executing Krishna consciousness. 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan ki, Gopal Bhatta Goswanandi. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 14, text number 21. Tabe kata dine prabhu jana chakramana. Tabe kata dine prabhu jana chakramana. Nana chamatkara tata kara ila darshana. Tabe, thereafter. Kata, some. Dine, days. Prabhura, of the Lord. Janu, knees. Chankramana, the crawling. Nana, various. Chamatkara, wonderful. Tata, also. Kara ila, caused. Darshana, the sight. Translation: after some days the Lord began to crawl on his knees, and he caused various wonderful things to be seen. Please repeat. After some days the Lord began to crawl on his knees. After some days the Lord began to crawl on his knees. And he caused various wonderful things to be seen. And he caused various wonderful things to be seen. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Chaitanya Bhagavat describes that one day while the Lord was crawling upon his knees, the bells on his waist ringing very sweetly, a snake came out to crawl in the yard of the Lord, who captured the snake like a curious child. Immediately the snake coiled over him. The Lord, as a child, then rested on the snake, and after some time the snake went away, leaving aside the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Ganim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. So Vrindavan Das Thakur, as Prabhupada has mentioned here, describes this pastime a little bit more elaborately, and of course, as was the case on many occasions, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami just mentions it very briefly because it had already been described by the other great biographer of Mahaprabhu, Vrindavan Das Thakur. So in the Chaitanya Bhagavat it is mentioned, as Prabhupada has very nicely summarised here, that when Mahaprabhu encountered this particular serpent in his yard, the serpent actually took on a wonderful form and allowed baby Nimai to actually lie on him, just as Lord Anantasesha provides what's described there as a resting couch for Lord Narayan. So in the same way, this particular serpent, which some of the Lord's confidential family members and associates realised afterwards was none other than Lord Anantasesha, providing this nice resting couch for Gaur Narayan. Sometimes Mahaprabhu is described like that, as the Golden Narayan, Supreme Lord appearing in golden form. And of course, Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata were very initially, and other relatives, extremely concerned. Their baby was lying very, very casually on this. The snake had actually, as snakes do, it had coiled its body around and provided this very nice resting couch for baby Nimai. But the parents were anxious, and so they were chanting mantras for little baby Nimai's protection, and afterwards they actually tied a talisman on Lord Caitanya. They poured Ganges water on different parts of the Lord's body, in this way trying to protect him for what potentially appeared to be a dangerous situation. But as is mentioned here by Krishnadas Kaviraj, the word wonderful things to be seen, adbhut, I think is the Bengali word for any adbhut, the Adbhut Mandir, which was seen by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his son Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati 2 nights in a row when they were looking across the Jalangi River, early part of last century, and they saw this magnificent effulgence, and the predictions were there even by Nityananda Prabhu hundreds of years before, that a big temple would come up. So this wonderful adbhut. So this is just another one of Mahaprabhu's early delightful childhood pastimes. And of course Krishna does say in Gita that fools deride him when he appears in the human form. They do not know his transcendental nature and his supreme dominion over all that be. Avajadanti ma mudha manusin tanam asritam. Yeah. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. So Krishna can perform wonderful pastimes which cannot be understood in full. Even the Lord cannot sometimes fully comprehend his own mysterious pastimes, what to speak of non-devotees. And even Krishna does wonderful things that astonish even his pure devotees. We have today a very wonderful occasion, the disappearance anniversary of Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So we sang those prayers, which Prabhupada was very fond of singing, and I think there's at least 2 recordings of Prabhupada singing the Sri Sri Sad Goswami Astakam, 8 prayers. One of those One of those recordings, very delightful. They're both very delightful, but one, I think, the addition of some classical Indian instruments are there, perhaps sitar and sarod, something like that. So we'll attempt, we've done a little research, and we'll attempt to say a little bit about Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami. This Tirubhav Mahotsava disappearance anniversary is considered more important than the appearance anniversaries, because on the disappearance one can look back on the amazing service of the Acharya. So in that way, in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, considered even more auspicious than the appearance day. But there's one very interesting fact, that you won't find Gopal Bhatta Goswami's name mentioned very much in the literatures of the other Goswamis. And for example, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami approached Gopal Bhatta Goswami before he wrote this Caitanya Charitamrita and asked for his blessings. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami said, certainly I will give you my blessings on one condition. Does anyone know what that condition was?
You leave his name out of it?
Fantastic. Very good. Yes. That you not mention my name in this book that you're about to write. For that reason, we don't, apart from very brief mention, maybe once or twice. And similarly with the other works of the Goswamis, for example, and we'll get to it, these notes are not in chronological order, so we'll be jumping around different times in the life of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. But in other places, for example, Jiva Goswami, in one of his Sandarbhas, he acknowledges Gopal Bhatta Goswami obliquely by saying a certain devotee from a Brahmin family in South India. And that's as deep as he goes. Doesn't mention him by name. So we'll start. Gopal Bhatta Goswami appeared in the year 1503. And some say he lived for 75 years, some say 85 years. So, he was born in a very illustrious Brahmin family in Srirangam in South India. He had his father and mother, very pious priestly members of the Srirangam Brahmana community. Venkata Bhatta was his father, and he had two uncles. Trimala Bhatt, I think, was the eldest of the three brothers, and Prabodhananda Saraswati, who served as Gopal Bhatta Goswami's instructing spiritual master. For many years, the two of them went and resided in Sri Brajadam. And when Mahaprabhu spent 4 months of the rainy season on his tour of South India, he stayed in the house of Venkata Bhatta. And at that time, Gopal, interesting that he was given that name by his parents and other elders, because it's a real Braj name, a real Krishna name. He wasn't given the name Vaikuntanath or Narayan, he was given Gopal. So indicative of the child's future attraction to the loving devotional service of Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So little Gopal was 8 or 10 years of age when Mahaprabhu came and stayed in his house, and he assisted his parents in rendering numerous services and became very attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during that time. So much so, and it's said, some biographers have said that actually Mahaprabhu himself initiated Gopal as a boy during that time. And little Gopal very much wanted to go with Mahaprabhu when the Lord left after his 4-month stay. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed him, no, you stay here and continue serving your parents, and when they leave this realm, then you go to Vrindavan, which is exactly what happened. And this is interesting that Caitanya Mahaprabhu was still performing his pastimes in Jagannath Puri when Gopal's parents departed. But Gopal went straight to Vrindavan. He didn't go to where Caitanya Mahaprabhu was still performing wondrous pastimes in Jagannath Puri. He actually went straight to Vrindavan. He could have gone, but our acharyas describe that he took the Vani, the instruction of Lord Chaitanya, so seriously. There's Vani and there's Vapu. There's the instructions of one's guru, and then there's the personal association and an opportunity to render service personally. But he took the Vani, and of course we know Prabhupada, there are many, many instances, and Prabhupada himself explained that it was 30 years after he got the final instruction from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to try to preach in English. If he ever got money to print books, and Prabhupada commented that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left this realm in 1936, I think the last day or the first day of 1937, 5:30 in the morning on New Year's Day. But anyway, it was 30 years, you could say, until Prabhupada arrived in America, and then a year later was able to start his vigorous preaching work. But Prabhupada never forgot that instruction. So similarly, Gopal went straight to Vrindavan and performed his devotional service there for the next 45 years. And during that time, and letters were going back and forward between the Goswamis and Lord Chaitanya in Puri, and Rupa and Sanatan sent a letter to Lord Chaitanya that Gopal Bhatta had arrived, and Lord Chaitanya was so happy and gave instructions to Rupa and Sanatan that you treat him just like your brother. And Lord Chaitanya sent from Puri some of his own cloth and also a small wooden choki, sometimes it's referred to, a small seat that Lord Chaitanya used to sit on. And those items are still there in the Radha-Raman Temple in Vrindavan, very, very sacred. Items used personally by Lord Chaitanya, and some say that this was the initiation into sannyas by Lord Chaitanya for Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who remained single, lifelong brahmachari and renunciant. And of course, very famous pastime is of Gopal Bhatta Goswami going on pilgrimage to many different holy places, and one of those was the Kaligandaki River in Nepal. And it's a very sacred place. We've had the good fortune to visit there twice in the early 1990s, the Kaligandaki River, in the company of His Holiness Indraduma Swami. Wonderful, very spiritually potent place. Kaligandaki is considered non-different to Srimati Tulsi Devi. It's a Gupta Vrindavan, or hidden secret Vrindavan, as there are others around India. And the shalagrams wash down from 2 or 3 other lakes very high up in the Himalayas called Damodar Kund. It's about 20,000 feet up. We went up as high as 13,000 feet to Muktinath, and we collected euphosic in the waters, sacred waters of Kaligandaki. And if you're very fortunate, Lord Shalagram appears to you, as he did for Gopal Bhatta Goswami, in 12 different forms, and one of those was the Damodar Shila. And apparently they all jumped into his kamandalu, or water pot, simultaneously. And he put them back in. And then they jumped back into his water pot again. And he thought, well, I guess they want to be with me. So he took them all back to Vrindavan. And on Nrsimha Chaturdasi, Lord Nrsimhadev's appearance day, one merchant came And at that point, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, like the other Goswamis, was roaming about Vrindavan, sleeping under different trees. And he was keeping his shalagrams in a wicker basket, tying them to the trees at night, and they would be hanging there. So on this particular occasion, a merchant, a very prosperous merchant, was going around Vrindavan giving the other Goswamis clothes and jewelry for their large, life-like deities of Krishna. And he came and did the same for Gopal Bhatta Goswami. But Gopal, he was lamenting that he didn't have a big human-like form of Krishna to worship. And he was crying tears of ecstasy, and this was Lord Nrsingadev's. It was a festival day. So he couldn't sleep that night. He was lamenting. And in a dream, his Damodar, Sheila, said, in the morning all will be revealed. And sure enough, when he got up in the morning, the Damodar Sheila had transformed himself, self-manifesting deity, into the beautiful deity of Radha Raman. And it's said that on the back of Lord Radha Raman, you can still see the original Damodar Shalagram Sheila. So in the mysterious way that Krishna arranges to fulfill the heartfelt desires of his devotees, that was the origin of the wonderful, extremely popular deity of Krishna, and of course that deity is the only deity of Krishna who wasn't taken out of Vrindavan during the time of the persecutions by the Mohammedans in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. He stayed there, has never moved, unlike many of the other deities were taken for their safekeeping to Rajasthan. Radha Govinda, Radha Madan Mohan, and Radha Gopinath, and others all, and they've never come back to Braj. And that is considered significant, that their devotees in Jaipur and Udaipur and other places in Rajasthan, they have such attachment for those deities that Krishna can't leave. He stays there. So, and it is interesting that, of course, Radha Raman is not a big deity, maybe yay big. I'm sure many of us have had darshan of his lordship. And he's after some years, a temple was constructed for him by Gopal Bhatta Goswami and his disciples, and that temple is still there today, and it was very cleverly designed in such a way that it doesn't actually look like a temple. It looks like a large home from the outside. It's only when you go through the very large gates at the front that it opens up into a temple. And to the extent that they also painted a green crescent moon on the front gate, which is, of course, we all know, a sacred symbol of the Islamic faith. So just in case there were any marauding fanatical Islamists still wanting to desecrate temples, if they went down the street they would see, Muslim house, nothing going on there, nothing to see there. So in this way, Radha Ramanji has stayed there in Vrindavan all that time. So let me we'll pick it up again. Okay, this is interesting. So on his tour of North India, Gopal Bhatta did stay at a very, very pious Brahman's house near Haridwar. And the Brahmana and the Brahmani were a little unhappy because they hadn't had any children. So they asked if Gopal Bhatta could bless them to have a child. So he said he would pray to Krishna, yes, that you be blessed with a son. So put a pin in that, everybody, and we'll come back to the rest of that story, okay? Let's just see. Trying to create a little bit of mystique here. Not sure how we'll go. We did mention Srinivasacharya, his disciple. This is interesting that Srinivas, towards the end of Gopal Bhatta Goswami's life, he was thinking of placing Lord Radharaman in the care of Srinivasacharya, his disciple. But when he realized what a wonderful preacher Srinivasacharya was, he decided against that and sent him back to Bengal and Orissa to preach because he was such a wonderful preacher. Gopal Bhatta, of course, is famous for his collaboration with Sanatana Goswami in composing the Hari Bhakti Vilas. And he also wrote, and it's said that he edited that work for Sanatana Goswami, and the book was published under Gopal Bhatta Goswami's name due to the great affection that Sanatana Goswami had for Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And it's also said that it was Gopal Bhatta Goswami who's responsible for originating the 6 philosophical theses of the Satsandarbhas, which were then very elaborately developed by Srila Jiva Goswami. And it is in one of those, it's in the Tattva Sandarbha that Jiva acknowledges him a Brahmana devotee from South India who helped him. He was such a scholar, Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And another interesting thing, it was Gopal Bhatta Goswami and Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami who did most of the initiating of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas in Vrindavan at that time. Even though Rupa and Sanatana and Raghunath were revered and were the principal shiksha or instructing spiritual masters, because of having been, at least Rupa and Sanatana, ostracized from strict Brahminical culture due to being employed as ministers in Nawab Hussain Shah's government, so as not to agitate, Rupa Goswami, we know, only initiated one disciple, and that was his nephew Jiva. He also, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, wrote a commentary on Bilvamangala Thakur's Krishna Caritamrita, a very important book. I think one of the books that Lord Caitanya rediscovered in South India. And he wrote another book called the Sat Kriya Sara Dipika, which means it's all the Vaishnava samskaras for all the different ashrams. And the translation of that is light on the essential sacraments of the Vaishnavas. Now, he is considered, it's mentioned in Gaura Ganadesh Dipika, that he is non-different. He is Ananga Manjari, and some say Guna Manjari. Anyone know who Ananga Manjari is in Krishna's pastimes? Ladies? Ananga Manjari. Correct. Fantastic. Yeah. Doing well this morning. Oh, Srimati Radharani's younger sister. Yeah. Ananga Manjari. Okay. So, let's just see here. Running out of time, but don't want to miss anything. All right, so we'll mention this now. This is the one we left hanging out there a little bit. Okay, got to find his name here. Sometimes we have too many notes. Krishna, maybe it's... here we go, yeah. Okay, so... Do we remember the pious couple with no children back on the North Indian tour, Haridwar? So one day, this young man approached Gopal Bhatta Goswami in Braja and introduced himself. He said, "My name is Gopinath Pujari Goswami, and of the couple near Haridwar who Gopal Bhatta had blessed to have a son." What the father had said was, if we do have a child, when he grows up, I'll send him to you to be your disciple. So this young man came from Haridwar, came to Braja, and introduced himself. "These are my parents. You stayed with them in their house, and my father has honoured his pledge to you that..." And this young man stayed with Gopal Bhatta Goswami for his entire life and served Radha Raman as his pujari for his entire life. Gopinath Pujari Goswami. So, and we know that our predecessor acharyas Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Srila Prabhupada had very friendly relations with the priests at Lord Radha Raman's temple. Some of those early associates, grandfather, great-grandfather, were Padmanabha Goswami and so very, very friendly. The Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition is very much steeped there. It's interesting, Radha Raman has on his left side, there is a feather. There's no deity of Srimati Radharani beside Lord Radha Raman, but there is a feather which has Radha's name painted on it in Sanskrit. And there's also a silver crown which symbolises Srimati Radharani. You can link there. And once a year, on the appearance of Lord Radha Raman, the deity is bathed publicly. That's on the full moon day of the month of Vaishakha. His temple is considered one of the most important temples in Braja. And Radha Raman's face is considered the same as Lord Govinda's, his chest the same as Gopinath, and his lotus feet identical with Madan Mohan. And there's a stove fire which has been burning and never gone out for the past 450 years at the Radha Raman temple. And that's what all the offerings to the deity, to his lordship, are cooked on, and a very, very high standard of deity worship, cooking of offerings and so on. And this is interesting. When Radha Raman appeared, there was still potential for atrocities in Braj. So for considerable amount of time, Lord Radha Raman was kept hidden at night. His pujaris would take him on a boat into a lake, and they would guard him at night on the boat with bows and arrows, and those arrows were tipped with poison. And those arrows are still there at the Radha Raman temple. Just don't touch. A little bit is mentioned about him in Gopal Bhatta Goswami, that is, in Narahari Sakar's Bhakti Ratnakar. He's said to have embodied extreme humility. Same time, he was extremely aristocratic in his bearing. It's said that he was very majestic, and regal was the word I was trying to remember. It was like when he was sitting with the other Goswamis, it was like a king surrounded by his Brahmin advisors. Krishna, Krishna. Just don't want to miss anything here. Krishna. I think. Oh, he's very good friends with Bhugarbha Goswami. And Bhugarbha Goswami, who, along with Lokanath Goswami, was sent to Braj by Lord Caitanya before the other Goswamis, Bhugarbha Goswami would delight in watching Gopal Bhatta Goswami worship his deities, do deity worship in the morning. He would just love to watch that. And he was and his disciple, Srinivasacharya, was a very, very good organizer. So I think I better... and that fire, which has been burning for 450 years, that was started by Gopal Bhatta Goswami by chanting mantras and rubbing wood together. And it's been burning ever since. All right. Hare Krishna. Any quick question, comment, or... was it?
Quick comment.
Sure.
We always mention this point when Radharani's mentioned. You know, it's very awkward. This beautiful self-manifest duty was tested by this scientific testing, and there was absolutely zero evidence that it had been carved. So it's proved it's a self-manifest duty. It's not that it was manufactured by anybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes, thank you. No, thank you. Anything else? All right. Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi.